In a valley where two gentle hills leaned toward each other like old friends bowing their heads together, there ran a narrow stream called the Quiet Water. And across that stream, where the banks drew closest, there stood an old stone bridge, humped gently in the middle, the way a cat arches its back when it stretches after a long, warm nap. The bridge had no official name on any map, though every soul in the nearby village of Fen Mir knew it simply as the Whispering Bridge, and had known it by that name for so many generations that nobody could quite recall a time it had ever been called anything else. It was not a grand bridge. It was built of plain gray stone, weathered soft at its edges by centuries of rain, with a low wall on either side, just tall enough for a tired traveler to lean their elbows upon while they watched the water slip quietly by beneath. But it was said in Fen Mir, and had been said for longer than anyone could properly trace, that if a person stood at the very center of that bridge in the deep hush of evening and spoke their most gentle wish aloud in a voice no louder than a whisper, the stream below would carry that wish along with it down river and out past the edges of the valley to wherever such quiet wishes were meant to go. Nobody in Fen Mir claimed the bridge could grant wishes outright, the way a fairy tale might promise. It was understood, rather, as something gentler and altogether more modest than that. Not a place of magic, exactly, but a place of release, where a heavy wish, carried too long and too silently in a tired chest, could finally be set down, spoken softly into the world, and allowed to drift away on the water's own unhurried current. The keeper of this small tradition in the years this story takes place was an elderly woman named Hesper Wren, who lived in a cottage just at the near end of the bridge, close enough that she could hear, on quiet evenings, the particular soft murmur the stream made as it slid beneath the old stone arch. Hesper had lived beside the bridge for the whole of her long life and had grown over those many years into something like its unofficial guardian, not because anyone had appointed her to the role, but because she had simply always been there, tending her small garden of night-blooming flowers along the near bank, present and watchful whenever some troubled soul from the village made their way down to the water's edge at dusk. She never intruded on anyone's wishing. She understood better than most that a wish whispered aloud requires a particular kind of privacy, even when spoken in a public place, and so she kept always to her garden, tending her flowers with slow and patient hands, present enough to offer a kind word if one was wanted, distant enough to grant whatever solitude a visitor's heart required. But she watched all the same in her own quiet way, and over so many years of watching, she had come to understand a great deal about the particular kind of wishing that the bridge seemed to draw out of people. Not grand and impossible wishes for wealth or fame or some sudden reversal of fortune, but small, tender, deeply human wishes, the kind that most people carry silently for years without ever once speaking them aloud to another living soul. A father might come in the deep blue hour after sunset and whisper a wish for his stubborn son to finally forgive him for some old, unspoken quarrel. A young woman might come, her steps slow and hesitant, and whisper simply to sleep through a single night without waking, gasping from dreams she could never quite remember by morning. An old farmer might come, his hands still smelling of the day's harvest, and whisper nothing more than a wish for one more mild winter, one more easy season before his own tired body finally asked him to rest for good. The custom itself, Hesper had learned from her own mother, who had learned it in turn from her own grandmother, going back through so many careful tellings that nobody could say for certain where the very first thread of the story began. The old story went, Fenwick, the shepherd for whom the village itself had eventually been named many generations before Hesper's own birth, had been a quiet and solitary young man, tending his sheep alone on the hillsides above the valley through all the long seasons of the year, with little company besides his sheep and the slow murmur of the quiet water below. He had loved, from a distance and for many years, a young weaver's daughter in the village, though his own shyness had kept him from ever once speaking his affection aloud, even to himself in any words he could properly examine. One evening, walking home across the old stone bridge after a long day on the hillside, exhausted in the particular way that comes from carrying an unspoken feeling for far too long, Fenwick had stopped at the very center of the bridge to rest, and had found himself, quite without planning it, leaning over the low wall and whispering his affection down toward the water, not because he expected the stream to carry his words anywhere useful, but simply because the weight of carrying them silently for so many years had finally grown too heavy to bear another moment longer without some kind of release. "I love her," he was said to have whispered, so quietly that even he could barely hear his own words over the water's soft murmur. "I love her, and I am too afraid to ever tell her so. I wish I were braver. I wish I could simply speak the plain truth of my own heart, the way other men seem to manage so easily." He told no one what he had done, and continued on his way home, feeling, to his own quiet surprise, considerably lighter than he had felt in a very long while, though nothing at all about his circumstances had actually changed. But something had shifted in him all the same, in some manner he could not quite explain even to himself. The simple act of speaking his fear aloud, even to nothing more than a slow and indifferent stream, seemed to have loosened its grip on him just enough that the very next evening, crossing paths with the weaver's daughter at the village well, he found himself able, for the very first time in years, to say a few plain and honest words to her that he had never before managed to say to her. Whether the water itself had anything at all to do with this sudden loosening of his tongue, nobody could ever properly determine, and the old story, wisely, never claimed to know for certain. But the tale spread through the village all the same, as such tales tend to spread, softened gently with each new telling, until it had become, within a generation or two, a settled and trusted local custom, that a heavy wish, carried too long in silence, might grow lighter simply by being whispered aloud at the center of that particular bridge, above that particular patient water. Fenwick and the weaver's daughter were married the following spring, or so the story concluded, and it was said that Fenwick himself, in his own old age, took to tending the near bank of the bridge, much the way Hesper Wren now tended it in her turn, offering a quiet nod of encouragement to anyone he saw hesitating at the water's edge, understanding better than anyone the particular courage it took to finally speak a long-carried burden aloud. Hesper Wren herself had come to the bridge many years before this story properly begins, as a young woman not so very different from the ones she now watched over from her garden, troubled in her own case with grief so heavy it had seemed for a long while entirely unspeakable. She had lost her own young husband early in their marriage to a fever that swept through Fenmere one particularly hard winter, and had found herself in the long months that followed unable to speak his name aloud to anyone, as though saying it might somehow make the loss more permanent than it already unbearably was. Her own mother, watching her daughter grow paler and more silent with each passing week, had finally led her down to the bridge one evening, exactly as old Merrin would one day lead her own grandson, exactly as Tam would one day lead his own daughter in the long, unbroken chain of the custom, passing quietly from one careful hand to the next. Hesper had stood at the center of the old stone bridge that evening, her mother's hand resting gently on her shoulder, and had found to her own surprise that the words came easier there than they had come anywhere else in all those long, silent months. "I miss him," she had whispered down toward the slow, dark water, her voice cracking on the words she had not once managed to speak aloud since the funeral. "I miss him so much I don't know how to keep living in a house that still smells like him. I wish I didn't have to learn to be alone." The water had carried her words away, exactly as it had carried Fenwick's words away so many generations before, and exactly as it would carry Tam's words away so many generations after. And Hesper had felt in the days and weeks that followed something in her grief begin very slowly to loosen, not vanish entirely, for a loss of that particular size rarely vanishes all at once, but loosen enough that she found herself able, bit by bit, to speak her husband's name again, to smile faintly at some small memory of him, rather than flinching away from it. It was in the years that followed, as her own grief settled into something she could carry more easily, that Hesper had found herself drawn, again and again, back down to the bridge. Not always to whisper a wish of her own, for there came a season, eventually, when her heart had grown lighter than it had been in years, but simply to sit in her garden along the near bank, tending her night-blooming flowers, present for whoever else might need, on any given evening, the same quiet release she herself had once needed so badly. She never married again, though she was not by any means an unhappy or a lonely woman in the long decades that followed. She had simply discovered in her own grief and her own slow healing a purpose she had not expected to find, the patient, unassuming work of tending a place where other tired hearts could come to set their own burdens down, exactly as she had once set down her own. It was in the years before Tam Ashford's own visit to the bridge, a young woman named Sable, who came often to the water's edge in the deep hour just after sunset, troubled by dreams so vivid and so unsettling that she had grown over many months almost afraid to close her eyes at all. She could never remember upon waking exactly what the dreams contained, only a lingering sense of dread that clung to her through the whole of the following day, the way the smell of smoke clings to clothing long after the fire itself has been put out. She had tried a great many remedies before finally making her way to the bridge. Warm milk before bed, a small candle left burning through the night, even on one particularly desperate evening, an attempt to simply stay awake altogether, reading by lamplight until exhaustion finally overtook her fear. Nothing had worked for very long. It was Hesper herself, noticing the particular hollow look that had settled beneath the young woman's eyes over several weeks of watching her pass the garden without ever quite finding the courage to stop, who finally approached her one evening, offering nothing more than a gentle nod toward the bridge and a soft, "Some troubles grow lighter simply by being spoken aloud, dear, even to nothing more than the water." Sable had stood a long while at the center of the bridge that evening, watching the dark water slip by beneath her, before she finally found the courage to whisper her own small confession down toward the current. I don't know what I'm afraid of. I just know I'm afraid every single night, and I'm so tired of not knowing why. I wish I could understand my own fear well enough to finally set it down." She did not find in the days that followed any sudden or complete understanding of what exactly haunted her sleeping mind, but she found to her own quiet relief that the dread itself had grown somewhat thinner, somewhat easier to carry, simply for having been spoken aloud rather than held silently, and she returned to the bridge many evenings after that, whispering whatever small new piece of the fear surfaced each week, until gradually, over that following season, her nights grew calmer, her sleep grew deeper, and the hollow look beneath her eyes began, slowly, to fade. Hesper watched all of this unfold from her garden, week after quiet week, offering nothing more than her steady presence, and now and then a soft word of encouragement when Sable's courage seemed to waver at the water's edge. It was, Hesper often reflected in the years that followed, the whole of her own calling laid bare in a single unfolding season. Not the fixing of any particular trouble, for she had no power at all to fix a single one of the burdens whispered down to that patient stream, but simply the steady, patient tending of a place where fixing could gradually happen on its own. It was on one particular evening, deep in the golden hush of late summer, that a young boy named Tam Ashford made his way down to the Whispering Bridge for the very first time, sent by his grandmother, who had noticed over recent weeks the particular hollow look that had settled beneath her grandson's eyes. Tam was 9 years old and had been troubled for nearly a month now by a fear he could not quite name to himself, let alone explain to any of the grown-ups, who kept asking with increasing concern what exactly was the matter. It was not any single nameable fear, the kind a person could point to and say, "There, that is the thing that frightens me." It was something quieter and more diffuse than that, a general unease that settled over him each evening as the light began to fade, a restless worry that seemed to have no proper object at all, only a vague and unshakable sense that something, somewhere, was not quite right, though he could never say what. His grandmother, a wise and patient woman named Old Merrin, who had lived in Fenmere long enough to remember when the Whispering Bridge had still been considered by the youngest villagers something of an open secret rather than a well-known local custom, had watched her grandson grow paler and more tired with each passing week, and had finally, on this particular evening, taken his small hand in her own weathered one and led him down the lane toward the water. "Where are we going, grandmother?" Tam asked, his voice small and uncertain in the deepening dusk. "To the bridge," said Old Merrin simply. "There is an old custom there, Tam, older than I am, though not by so very much. Some troubles grow lighter simply by being spoken aloud, even if there is no one there to answer them. And I think, my dear, that you have been carrying something heavy enough for long enough that it is high time you set a little of it down." They found Hesper Wen tending her flowers in the last of the daylight, and though the old woman said nothing at all to them, she offered Old Merrin a small, knowing nod, the particular nod exchanged between two people who have each spent a great many years understanding the same quiet truth, and returned to her gentle work among the night-blooming flowers, granting them, without a word, the privacy their errand required. Old Merrin led Tam out onto the bridge itself, its old grey stones still faintly warm beneath them from the day's earlier sun, and stopped him at the very center, where the humped stone arched highest above the slow-moving water below. "Now," said Old Merrin softly, kneeling down beside him so that her face was level with his own. "I want you to lean over the wall just here and look down at the water. Don't rush yourself, just watch it for a moment and let your eyes grow used to how slowly and how patiently it moves." Tam did as he was told, leaning his small elbows against the sun-warmed stone, watching the quiet water slip by beneath them, dark and glimmering faintly in the day's last light, moving with the same unhurried patience it had moved with, presumably, for as long as the valley itself had existed. "It's not in any hurry at all," he said softly, after a long moment's watching. "No," agreed old Merrin. "It never is. That is precisely why this bridge has always been the place for setting down heavy things. A worry set loose on hurried water gets swept along too quickly to properly loosen its grip. But a worry set loose on patient water, water with all the time in the world, has room to unclench slowly, the way a tight fist unclenches only once it understands fully and completely that nothing is chasing it any longer." "Now," said old Merrin softly, "I want you to think very carefully about the thing that has been sitting so heavy in your chest these past weeks. Not the whole tangled shape of it, if it is too large to see all at once. Just the smallest true piece of it you can find, the piece closest to the surface, easiest to reach." Tam was quiet for a long while, watching the water, his small brow furrowed in the particular concentration of a child trying very hard to locate something slippery and half hidden within himself. "I think," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper, "I think I'm scared that everyone I love is going to leave someday, like Grandfather did, and nobody ever tells me it isn't going to happen. They just say not to worry, but that isn't the same as saying it won't happen." Old Merrin felt something soft and sorrowful settle in her own chest at this small, quiet confession, understanding at once, with the particular clarity that comes to grandmothers who have themselves buried a husband, exactly where this diffuse and nameless worry had first taken root. But she said nothing of comfort just yet, for she understood too that comfort offered too quickly can sometimes smother a feeling before it has finished being properly spoken. That is a very heavy thing to carry alone for a whole month. I am glad you have finally found the words for it. Now, would you like to set it down here, the way so many others have set their own heavy things down on this very bridge for longer than either of us have been alive?" Tam nodded, small and solemn, his eyes still fixed on the slow, dark water below. "Then lean a little closer," said old Merrin, "and whisper it to the water, not to me and not to yourself, to the stream, as though it were a very old and very patient friend who has heard every kind of worry a person could ever carry and has never once judged a single one of them for being spoken aloud." Tam leaned forward, his small chin nearly resting against the sun-warmed stone, and after a long moment's hesitation, he whispered, so softly that even his grandmother, kneeling close beside him, had to strain to catch the words. "I wish I didn't have to be scared that everyone I love will leave someday. I wish I could just love them without being so afraid all the time." The words drifted down toward the water and seemed for a moment to simply dissolve into the soft murmur of the current, carried away downriver exactly as old Merrin had promised, out past the edges of the valley to wherever such quiet wishes were meant to go. Tam was quiet for a long while after that, still leaning over the wall, watching the water continue its slow and patient journey beneath the bridge. "Do you think it heard me?" he asked finally. "I think," said old Merrin softly, "that whether or not the water itself hears anything at all, something important has already happened, simply because you found the courage to speak it aloud instead of carrying it silently for another month and another after that and another after that, the way so many grown-ups mistakenly believe is the braver path. A wish spoken is already lighter than a wish kept secret, Tam, whether or not the whispering water changes a single thing about tomorrow." Tam considered this for a long moment, and then, to his own quiet surprise, felt something in his chest that he could not quite name, but which felt, more than anything else, like the particular relief of setting down a heavy basket after carrying it much too far. "I think I feel a little lighter," he admitted softly. "That is exactly how it is meant to feel," said old Merrin, and she gathered her grandson into a slow, warm embrace, the two of them standing together at the center of the old stone bridge, listening to the water continue its unhurried journey beneath their feet. They returned to the bridge together many more evenings after that first one, not because the fear vanished entirely all at once, for fears of that particular shape rarely do, but because Tam found over those following weeks that the whispering itself had become its own small comfort, a place to set down whatever new small piece of the worries surfaced each week, rather than letting it all accumulate silently until it grew too heavy to name at all. Old Merrin walked with him each time, kneeling beside him at the center of the bridge, listening without ever once rushing him toward whatever words he was working to find. And slowly, gradually, the hollow look beneath Tam's eyes began to fade, replaced by the particular steady calm of a child who has learned, far earlier than most, that a heavy feeling shared aloud, even to nothing more than a patient stream, is a feeling that has already begun to loosen its grip. Hesper Wen, tending her night-blooming flowers along the near bank, watched this quiet ritual unfold week after week, exactly as she had watched 1,000 similar rituals unfold over her long life beside the bridge, and felt each time the same small and settled satisfaction of a woman who has spent her whole life guarding something gentle and useful without ever once needing credit for the guarding. It was many years later, long after old Merrin herself had passed, and long after Hesper Wen had grown too frail to tend her garden without help, that Tam Ashford, grown now to a tall, steady young man with children of his own, found himself walking back down the familiar lane toward the Whispering Bridge, his own small daughter's hand held tight in his. His daughter, a watchful girl of 7 named Lyra, had been troubled lately by a fear of her own, not the same fear that had once hollowed Tam's eyes, but a fear that all children seem to discover sooner or later in their own particular shape and season. A fear in Lyra's case of the dark itself, of the particular thick and shifting shadows that gathered each night in the corners of her small bedroom. "Where are we going, Papa?" Lyra asked, her small hand tightening slightly around his own as the lane curved down toward the water. "To the bridge," said Tam gently, echoing, without quite realizing he was doing so, the very same words his own grandmother had once spoken to him on an evening much like this one. "There is an old custom there, Lyra, older than your grandmother, though not so very much older than me. Some troubles grow lighter simply by being spoken aloud, even if there is no one there to answer them. They found the bridge exactly as Tam remembered it, its old gray stones humped gently above the slow, dark water, the quiet water sliding beneath the arch with the same unhurried patience it had always carried, undisturbed by all the years that had passed since he himself had last stood whispering at its center. He led his daughter out to the very middle of the bridge and knelt down beside her, exactly as his own grandmother had once knelt beside him, so that his face was level with her small, worried one. "Now," he said softly, "I want you to lean over the wall just here and look down at the water. Don't rush yourself. Just watch it for a moment and let your eyes grow used to how slowly and how patiently it moves." Lyra did as she was told, leaning her small elbows against the sun-warmed stone, watching the water slip by beneath them. And after a long moment, she whispered, almost to herself, "It's not in any hurry at all." "No," Tam agreed, smiling the small, quiet smile of a man rediscovering all at once a comfort he had nearly forgotten he still carried. "Never is," continued gently. "Now I want you to think very carefully about the thing that has been sitting so heavy in your chest these past weeks. Not the whole tangled shape of it, if it is too large to see all at once. Just the smallest true piece of it you can find." Lyra was quiet for a long while, watching the water, and then in a small and careful voice, she whispered her own wish down toward the slow, dark current. A simple, tender wish about the shadows in her room, spoken softly, exactly as her father had once spoken his own wish to this very same patient water so many years before. Tam felt his own chest loosen and settle as he listened. The particular warm ache of watching a lesson once given to him so gently passed now into hands small enough to still need it freshly. "Do you feel any lighter?" he asked her softly, once her whisper had faded into the water's own quiet murmur. "A little," Lyra admitted. "Maybe more than a little." "That is exactly how it is meant to feel," said Tam, gathering his daughter into a slow, warm embrace, the two of them standing together at the center of the old stone bridge, listening to the water continue its patient journey beneath their feet, exactly as it had listened to every whispered wish that had ever been offered to it, going back further than either of them, or even old Hesper Wren herself, could properly trace. The Whispering Bridge still stands today, humped gently above the slow-moving, quiet water, its gray stones weathered a little softer each passing year by the same patient rain that has always tended them. And it is said in Fenmere that if you visit at dusk, in that deep and settling hush between the day's last light and the evening's first stars, you may still find some quiet soul leaning over its low stone wall, whispering some small, tender wish down toward the water below, trusting the way so many tired hearts have trusted before them, that a heavy thing spoken softly aloud is already a heavy thing beginning to grow lighter. Nobody can say for certain where all those whispered wishes finally go once the patient current carries them out past the edges of the valley. But perhaps, in the end, that was never truly the point of the whispering at all. If you are tired now, wherever you are listening from, you might borrow a little of the Whispering Bridge's old patience for your own resting tonight. Think first of a slow, dark stream moving beneath an old stone arch in no hurry at all to reach wherever it is going. Think next of a small, true worry, the smallest piece of whatever has been sitting heavy in your own chest, small enough to find, small enough to name. Let yourself whisper it, if only inside your own quiet mind, to that same patient water, trusting it to carry the weight a little further than you could carry it alone. Think of a kind and steady hand kneeling close beside you, waiting without any hurry at all for you to find the words. And let your final thought have no words in it at all. Only the soft, settled feeling of something heavy finally being set down. You need not wait for the thought after that one. It may never arrive, and that is exactly as it should be. That is the whole of what the old bridge at Fenmere has always known and has quietly offered, wish after gentle wish, to every tired heart that ever leaned against its sun-warmed stone. That a burden spoken softly aloud, even to nothing more than a patient stream, is already a burden beginning to grow lighter. Rest well. The water is still moving. The bridge is still listening, and somewhere, very softly, beside a slow and patient stream at the bottom of a quiet valley, a story is only just beginning to end.